There is a moment in every adult's financial life that feels unfair. You do everything right, yet nothing moves. You work. You save what you can. You try to be responsible, and your wealth still feels stuck. And the truth is simple. The stage where you feel the least progress is always the stage where the foundations are being built. In this video, I want to show you what really happens in that silent period before your money finally starts moving, so you don't quit right before the curve rises. Before we continue, if you enjoy videos that bring clarity, stability, and real-life financial confidence, consider subscribing. I would love to guide you through this journey week by week. I want to tell you a story about someone who could easily be you, or someone you know. Let's call her Elena. She is 42, a mother of a teenage son, working in an administrative role she never planned to stay in this long. Her salary covers life, but nothing more. Most months, she ends with a small cushion that disappears the moment a bill arrives earlier than expected. One night, after everyone is asleep, she opens her bank app and feels the same weight in her chest she has felt for years. Why does nothing ever move? She's not irresponsible. She's not reckless. She's not wasting money on luxury. She's just living. And somehow, living feels like running on a treadmill that never moves forward. But something shifts the day she hears a simple line while listening to an audiobook on her commute. Wealth is slow until it isn't. And in that moment, she realizes something she had never considered before. What if the problem wasn't that nothing was happening? What if the real problem was that she didn't know how compounding actually behaves in the early, invisible years? That night, she makes a quiet decision, the kind that doesn't look life-changing until it is. For most adults, the moment where wealth feels stuck is not a financial problem but an emotional one, because what no one explains clearly is that the early years of compounding are designed to look invisible. When Elena began her quiet experiment with small, consistent contributions, nothing in her life changed on the surface. The bills still arrived, the responsibilities were the same, the unexpected expenses still broke the rhythm of her month, and her bank balance barely moved. And yet, something subtle was happening underneath that almost no one recognizes. She was stepping into the stage where money doesn't reward you with results, but with identity. That stage feels slow, uncertain, and almost pointless, because the numbers are tiny and the progress is hidden, but emotionally, it is the most important stage of the entire journey. It's the stage where you teach yourself to act before you see reward, to choose consistency over emotion, and to break the belief that nothing is happening. In reality, something is happening. You're rewiring the part of your mind that used to need visible progress to stay committed. This early phase is where most people quit, not because compounding fails, but because the experience feels disconnected from the effort. That's why Elena's experience matters. Her first months weren't about growth. They were about proving to herself that she could commit to her future without needing instant validation. And that mindset, not the number in her account, is what quietly builds the foundation for the moment when the curve finally begins to rise. As the weeks passed, Elena began to realize that the real battle wasn't between her and the market, but between her expectations and reality. She had spent most of her adult life believing that progress should feel linear, that if she worked harder, saved carefully, and made responsible decisions, she should see measurable results quickly. But compounding does not follow the rhythm of human emotions. It follows the quiet rhythm of math, time, and patience. At first, this mismatch felt discouraging. She would check her account and see numbers that barely changed. A few dollars up, a few dollars down, and she questioned whether any of it made sense. But as she continued, something inside her softened. She started to understand that the early stage of wealth building is not supposed to look impressive because its purpose is not to impress, it is to stabilize. It is the stage where you learn to stay consistent regardless of how you feel, to protect your financial habits from the noise of the world, and to create a baseline of behavior that will support you later when the growth becomes visible. This was Elena's first revelation. When your wealth feels stuck, it is often because you are emotionally expecting results during the only stage where results are intentionally invisible. And when she accepted that truth, she stopped looking for proof and started looking for alignment. She realized that if she wanted her money to grow, she had to focus less on the number and more on the system that would carry her through the difficult months. That shift, from looking outward to looking inward, is the moment where stuckness quietly begins to dissolve. Around the third month, something small but meaningful began to change in Elena's behavior. She stopped checking her account every other day, not because she no longer cared, but because she finally understood that constant monitoring was feeding her anxiety instead of her clarity. So she made a quiet rule for herself. She would check her progress once a month and only after her contributions processed. That one decision reduced emotional noise more than any financial strategy ever could. And as her relationship with her money softened, something else emerged, a sense of calm responsibility. She recognized that the feeling of being stuck often comes not from a lack of progress, but from comparing her early steps to someone else's later stages. Online, she saw people posting screenshots of portfolios that looked massive, but none of them showed the years when nothing moved, the months when their balances were flat, or the moments they doubted everything. She began to understand that comparison is the most expensive habit a person can have because it steals your patience and sells you illusions. That realization became a turning point. Instead of asking, "Why isn't my money growing?" she started asking, "What habits am I building that my future self will thank me for?" And with that shift in focus, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: control. Not control over the market, but control over her decisions, her behavior, and her calm discipline. That's when she finally left a comment on one of the videos she watched. If you've ever felt financially behind, you're not alone. I'm learning to stay consistent even when I can't see the progress yet. She was no longer investing just money. She was investing identity. By the time Elena reached her 6th month, the numbers were still unimpressive, but her mindset had evolved in a way she never expected. One evening, while reviewing her budget, she noticed that the small automatic transfer she had set up no longer triggered the familiar feeling of loss. Instead, it felt like an anchor, something stable, predictable, and quietly strengthening her life from beneath the surface. That shift marked the beginning of what I call the identity stage, the moment when your investments stop feeling like money you could have used for something else and start feeling like commitments you refuse to break. For Elena, this stage arrived the first time life challenged her resolve. An unexpected expense appeared, the kind that usually forced her to hit pause on anything related to the future, and for a moment, she felt the old instinct to cancel her contribution. But instead she paused, breathed, and asked herself a different question. If I solve this without touching my investment, what would that say about who I'm becoming? And in that instant, she realized that the real value of her early contributions was not the balance. It was the message they sent about the type of person she was training herself to be. So she made adjustments elsewhere, small sacrifices that did not hurt her dignity or her joy, and she protected her investment habit like something sacred. The moment she did that, her relationship with money changed forever. Because when you protect the habit, even in difficult months, you step into a version of yourself that can actually hold long-term wealth. As Elena entered her 2nd year, the numbers began to show the first hints of progress. Not dramatic enough to impress anyone else, but clear enough for her to feel a quiet shift. Her contributions had slightly increased as her income changed, not through drastic leaps, but through gentle adjustments that reflected her new sense of responsibility. And with those small increases, she discovered a truth that most financial books mention, but most people overlook. The most powerful part of compounding is not the amount you invest, but the rhythm you build. Around this time, she encountered a principle in a book that stayed with her for days. Money grows in the spaces where consistency meets intention. It clicked instantly. She realized that her early frustration had come from expecting numbers to motivate her, when in reality, habits were the only thing strong enough to carry her through the slow chapters. And when she looked back at the first 12 months, she saw something beautiful hiding in plain sight. She had become someone who followed through. Someone who didn't abandon herself when life felt heavy. Someone who kept a promise to her future, even when the present felt demanding. That recognition created a sense of quiet pride, the kind that doesn't need applause or validation. And with that feeling, something else became clear. The feeling of being financially stuck often fades, not when the numbers change, but when your identity changes. Her contributions were still small, but her confidence was growing faster than her balance. And in personal finance, confidence is the first doubling effect most people never measure. By the time Elena reached the halfway point of her second year, something subtle but powerful began to shift beneath the surface. Her balance was still modest, and her life looked mostly the same on the outside, but the internal experience was completely different. She no longer felt the urge to justify her small contributions or apologize for her slow progress. Instead, she started to appreciate the long view, the idea that real financial stability is built in quiet seasons long before it becomes obvious to anyone else. And this was the moment she entered what I call the separation stage. The stage where your money begins to work slightly harder than it did before, not in dramatic ways, but in a steady, consistent rhythm that mirrors the habits you've built. It's a stage most people never reach because they quit in the boredom stage or the doubt stage long before the emotional payoff arrives. Elena didn't quit, and because she stayed, she began noticing something she had never seen before. Her account grew even in months when she felt tired, distracted, or overwhelmed. It felt like her future self had started helping her carry the weight. But even in this stage, progress can feel fragile and easy to miss if you're not paying attention. That's why bringing structure to your journey becomes essential. This is where the Trip to Wealth Command Center becomes crucial, a powerful Google Sheet system we're building for your financial needs. By tracking your net worth, contributions, and long-term trajectory visually, you transform invisible progress into visible momentum. You begin to trust the curve because you can see it forming, even when emotions suggest otherwise. You can join the tool's early access waitlist below and secure an exclusive discount. As Elena approached her third year, the most surprising transformation wasn't in her account balance, but in the way she carried herself. She no longer viewed wealth as a race or a comparison game, but as a long-term relationship with her future self. And because her mindset was shifting, she finally began to notice the early signs of what I call the compounding turn. The moment when your money starts growing in ways that feel disproportionate to your effort. It wasn't dramatic or explosive, but it was undeniably steady. There were months when her contributions were smaller than she had hoped, but the growth in her account still exceeded them. There were mornings when she opened her investment app and saw that her balance had increased without any extra work on her part, almost like a quiet reward for the discipline she had sustained. This was the moment she realized something profound. The feeling of being stuck had never meant that nothing was happening. It meant that she was still in the phase where progress grows roots before it grows branches. That realization helped her detach from the idea that wealth should feel fast. Instead, she embraced the truth that the financial lives of adults are rarely linear. They move in quiet slopes, subtle shifts, and long seasons where the seeds grow underground. And because she finally understood this rhythm, fear no longer dictated her decisions. She was no longer investing from anxiety or hope, but from clarity and stability. The exact ingredients that allow compounding to finally take over the heavy lifting. By the time Elena crossed her 5th year, she understood something that most people never fully grasp. Compounding does not reward those who chase intensity. It rewards those who protect consistency. Her account, once painfully slow and almost imperceptible in growth, now reflected a quiet acceleration that felt both grounded and earned. And when she looked back, she realized that the feeling of being financially stuck had been a misunderstanding of the early stages, not a reflection of her capability. In those first months and years, the numbers were small because they were supposed to be. The purpose was not to impress her, but to shape her, to build the emotional foundation required for long-term wealth. And that is the transformation most adults miss. When you anchor your decisions in clarity, stability, and consistency, you stop depending on visible progress to stay committed. You begin to trust the system you're building. You begin to respect the habits you're maintaining. And eventually, you experience the moment where the math starts working harder than you do. That is the turning point every adult deserves to reach. So if you're listening to this and you feel like your wealth isn't moving, don't assume you're failing. Assume you're in the first chapter of a story that becomes meaningful later. Protect your habits. Guard the small contributions. Track your progress visually. And remember Elena's journey not as a miracle, but as proof of what happens when an adult finally gives compounding enough time to reveal itself. Your curve will rise, not suddenly, but inevitably. When you look back at Elena's journey, you see the truth that most adults discover far too late. Wealth rarely begins with numbers. It begins with identity. The early stages feel slow, not because you're doing something wrong, but because compounding is still taking root beneath the surface. And that is exactly why this phase matters most. If you want to apply what you've learned today, start by choosing a number you can contribute without fear. Even if it feels small, automate it, protect it. Treat it like a bill you pay to your future self, not a flexible choice you negotiate every month. Then, give yourself permission to grow slowly. Check your progress monthly, not daily. Track your trajectory visually so you can see what your emotions can't. Adjust your contributions gently as your income changes, just like Elena did, one small increase at a time. Most importantly, detach from the idea that progress must feel rewarding at the beginning. The early stage is not about growth. It's about stability, identity, and emotional discipline. If you can hold the line through that season with clarity, patience, and consistency, you will eventually reach the moment where the curve begins to rise not suddenly, but inevitably. Remember, this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice. It is important to conduct thorough research and consult with financial professionals before making any investment decisions. The value of investments can fluctuate, and past performance is not indicative of future results. Always assess your risk tolerance and investment goals before allocating your capital. If you found value today, I highly recommend watching my next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, feel free to leave your comment below, especially if this video made you think differently. I appreciate your support more than you know. Until next time, stay consistent, stay patient, and stay winning. See you in the next one, Money Magician.